This is the full.
Because then when they
Ready?
Okay,
accounted for here.
December 19th meeting of the Nottingham Budget Committee comes to order. We'll start by
What are they gonna do at the end of the year?
Up here. Sorry.
introductions. Take it away, Tom.
I'm Tom LeVay.
Tim DeBrio.
Ben Bartlett.
Michael Keister.
John Decker.
Rosalind Chofter.
Sandra Jones.
Lee Letterer.
Okay, that's 8 of us so far. Carol will be arriving shortly, I expect. Aaron will not. And I don't know about whoever else is on the list. Yeah, Michelle, excuse me. She may arrive shortly, I don't know. The agenda is switched up a little bit tonight because we're expecting the school people to arrive as soon as they finish up their SAU budget meeting up in Northwood, which just started at like 6 o'clock and, or 5:30. 5:30, is that what they said? Was the start of their meeting? They were
No,
late.
yes, it was 5:30, but it could be 6 minutes, or it could be a little
Well,
bit
they
longer.
didn't leave the previous meeting that we had until 20th.
Yeah, they were late getting there, so.
So they were late getting.
Okay, so if we could start with the committee reports. Is Lee ready to
Oh,
start with
yes,
the committee report?
we got snowed out on Tuesday, of course, but we, the CIP, sorry, meeting, and we are scheduled, cross your fingers, for Monday, December 30th at 5 PM. Everyone on the board of all the different committees is able to make that date. So I am very excited. Now it's second year, I know what questions to ask and ready to go.
Good. One question that I might add to the list if it isn't already there. Have they got something in the 5 or 6 year out time frame for the purchase of the solar array?
With not pulling up the thing, I'm not sure, but I will add that, so 6 years out.
I don't know if it's 6 years, it's
Or
somewhere around
etc., yes,
that
yes, so
direction.
plans for the next step for the solar array.
Yeah.
Okay, I will ask them on Monday, the 30th.
Does anybody else have anything to pass to the committee through Lee?
And if you think of anything, email Michael, and then you can send it my way. Not that over the holiday you'll be thinking about CIP, but just in case.
Sure.
It was already in the last year's.
Oh, was it?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Solar power system, 2024. So it should continue to be
Oh,
there.
okay, that's only 5, or no, oh my goodness, 4 years away. All right,
Hopefully it's still there unless they
yeah.
decide to take it out for some reason.
Okay,
Thank you.
for the school facilities, we just had a meeting, Sandra and I both attended. We met with Amy Clark, who is the person at the State Department of Education who runs the capital aid for construction projects, and has for several years apparently, but she's had a pretty slow time of doing that since 2008 when they suspended it. We learned quite a bit from Amy about how that whole project, how that whole program works, and they made some modifications to what used to be the normal way of doing things in 2013, and just kind of rewrote the rules, and then it was still suspended until this past September was when they first started
Are
letting.
you saying they rewrote the rules but weren't
Well-
giving out money?
No, well, they rewrote the rules on the
process.
the procedures to be followed, and how much can be awarded in any given year and things like that. There's a maximum of $50 million that they will let out in any given year. The
Period, for
caveat,
everybody.
the caveat on that is that they are already committed to a bunch of that because the prior arrangement, going back decades, was that rather than award a whole bunch of money up front to a school's project and thus making a smaller bond requirement for the town, they would participate in the bond payments over the life of the bond. So that means they're still paying, they have been paying through the moratorium on several projects that were committed prior to 2008. They've been making these bond payments. And when they say they have $50 million to spend max in any given year, they start by paying the obligations to those existing bonds, and then whatever's left is what they have available for all the people that apply during the next biennium for their projects.
Now, you said 2008? That the year you,
2008 was the last time they awarded money.
most of the bonds are usually what, 10
Well,
years?
this past year, they awarded money too.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, but that was the first year.
But this past year, they're on a different program.
They're on the different program,
Yeah.
right? The one where they're giving, well, you're talking.
Well, yeah, one of the rule changes was that, beginning with the new funding program, they actually award 80% upfront, and then 20% goes to the project as it is completed. So that helps things.
Have they done the math, and do they have a estimate of how much they've already put aside for those ongoing projects of the 50 million?
I think it's substantial. I think it's something like 32,000, or 32 million has already been committed. So when they do the ranking of which projects have the most urgent need, and if we ended up as fifth or sixth ranked school to fund, there may or may not be anything available for us in this year. They'll get a second 50 million the following year.
And we'll be already
And we'll
hopefully
be at
in
the top of
line.
near the top of the list then, but we'll be a year behind on the project, and so it'll,
Michael, so that 50 million that's totaled per year, you said they switched programs in 2013?
that's when they rewrote the rules.
That's when they rewrote the rules.
Yeah.
So when they awarded money last year, is that under the same program as before, or,
That's the new rules.
so new rules? So in
So-
2013, they rewrote the rules,
Yeah,
but
there's
they
a-
had not, they were just giving out the money that they had already been awarding up through 2008.
Correct.
Okay.
They're still obligated to continue
Continue any
with
of those.
making their share of those
They
bond
have a 30-year
payments.
bond or something that they'd still be paying on that.
Thank
Um,
you.
You're ranked by a certain number of points, so it doesn't matter how soon you got your application in. You are ranked by the number of points. A safety is a point, a certain classroom type of need is a point, and there are other kinds of things that are considered points that you can get.
What's the maximum number of points that you could actually get possible?
She didn't say, there's a whole rule book on what they're doing, and in addition to that, there's waivers. Well, one of the things that was revealed to us was that Nottingham added a couple projects going back as far as 1973 to this building, which have little impact on, the school that's down the road. But there was a project back in 1973 and another one in 81, I think they
81.
said.
So we need to
And
get
because of-
waivers for those, to not consider those when they're considering what funding, because we're only allowed a certain amount of funding over a 50-year period, because the school's supposed to last 50 years. And our school is about the 50% mark, because it was built in 95. And this school was well over the 50, but it was using that money as a Band-Aid, and hopefully we can get a waiver that won't impact on our current funding. The other thing that came up is at one point, as a pure elementary school, we were allowed $124, I think.
Per square, no, 124 square feet.
124 square
person,
feet.
per pupil.
Per pupil, and, but we have a 7th and 8th grade, and they consider the highest level of that. So that would mean that we would be allowed 140 square feet, which is good, because we were getting close to that, the square footage mark too. And, but given the number of kids that we have in the school, and with the 140 square feet, well, that gives us more room. Did you say that?
Yeah, that allows them to proceed with the current design.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Other one, I apologize if you already said this, but who is "they"? Is it the New
State.
Hampshire School Board, or who, where, what department of the
No,
state is this coming
The
from?
Department of Education.
Department of, okay, so, Udall, what's the guy, the new Secretary of Education? Edelbut, it's coming from his office. All of these new, or no, you said it was 2013, but they're
Well, there's legislation that's
enforcing that, okay.
passed. There's different legislation that was passed.
Okay.
So you won't see any funds for another year, you said?
Well, we're currently scheduled to get our application in before this coming July 1.
Yep.
That's the deadline for all the applications for the following year.
Okay.
Okay, what happens next is, after we get our application in, then, and all the other schools that are looking to get projects started in the same time frame will also have theirs in by on July 1. Then the state will begin looking at the various points available to each school so that they can rank them. And by end of January, early February of the following year, 2020, I'm sorry, 2021, they will have the rankings available. And then they can say, okay, so this school gets some, this school gets some, and this school gets some, and then we're out of money or whatever they're allowed to get to max out their 50 million for the year. And those funds don't actually go to the project until the following July, your first,
New fiscal year.
and the first thing that the first time they actually award funds is the July following. So what we're looking for, if we get everything on schedule and get ranked appropriately and they're ready to go, will be to start construction July 31st, isn't it? Do you remember?
So, yeah, I remember it all. You guys are doing a
Okay.
great job, though. I'll tell you that. It's not easy when you first hear it. So.
Sometime June 1 or
so
July
they fund,
1 or,
your state budget's set up in the biennium.
yeah.
So you would get aid potentially July 1. You would get 80% up front if your project passes.
Right.
The issue that some schools had this year was where there was a continuing resolution. Everything was funded at last year's level until they passed the budget in, I think, September or the end of
Right,
August.
yeah. So it could all get held
That's a
up.
potential issue there, too. So
Yeah.
there are, there's some hurdles. But there always is, so.
What percent of the total project is the state funding?
We're expecting 30%. Now, I have to give that a caveat because there are parts of the project they don't fund. And one of those projects, or one of those parts of the project is preschool. So the square footage that we were hoping to add on to accommodate preschool would not necessarily be funded. There are some waivers for that too, right?
Well, actually, all you have to do is use your existing space.
Put them in the
For
existing
preschool.
space.
Reallocate?
Then use the new space for not preschool.
Right, there's tricks,
So.
Yeah.
tricks of the trade.
However, that doesn't mean that 5 years from now, we can say, you know, that
Right,
room
yeah.
that we built is really more suited to a preschool because it's got the bathrooms and it's got exterior access and whatnot.
20 years.
20 years, you can't put preschoolers in there for 20 years.
Because
Or else
I
you have
asked
to give
that
the money
question,
back.
and I said, so you just wait till that school's built and then you change the thing? And she said, well, no, not really, then you have to give us our money back because you didn't use it the way we said you could.
So looking at the CIP, is the 2021 date actually realistic of the renovation? Or is it now, it's still in
I
line?
think,
That's our plan.
so, yeah, I think that's the plan right now, but I also think the facilities committee should be getting back together and discussing what they heard today, and making any adjustments, they need recommendations, to the board, and then the board needs to consider that. So I don't know if there's an answer to that right now. What do you think?
You're correct. I think they do need to at least put a contingency plan in place. Because we may or may not get
I'll
ranked.
talk to the boards and write the waivers immediately, and then bring them back for review. We'll at least get that, we'll.
Get everything
we'll
moving.
start taking a look at her. So, that
Yeah, thank you.
help? Or hurt?
Say, take a breath, take your jacket off,
I'm
relax.
actually gonna go use the restroom if that's okay.
I don't know these gentlemen, so.
We'll introduce them here shortly. They're not here yet.
Oh, they're not here.
Yeah, they're,
A whole bunch of them.
And the numbers that we got from the architect today on costing showed that they're looking at closer to 5.1 million for the construction and soft costs. And then there's some alternatives where if they were to sprinkle the whole building, that could be another, the quote that they got was 163,605.
I thought it was a lot more.
And
No,
yeah, they're gonna take another look at what that included. It may be that they're getting some discounts on the fact that they don't have to build the separation that they would have to build if they didn't sprinkle the whole building. They
and
might
what was
get
that
some
number
breaks
again?
on that.
I'm sorry.
Which one?
The
163.
addition of the sprinkler,
Sprinkling the existing part of the building is 163,605, but they're questioning that. They're thinking that the guy that did the estimating on that may not have taken everything into account, because that's like
thank you.
20% of what we were hearing before.
Yeah. I think even less than that.
So let's, the facilities meeting, and like I said, they're going to take another look at possibly the time frame, what's realistic, and what contingencies we need to build in. But Mr. Runing is going to give us some information about a warrant article that they're putting together for this March to cover the costs that are coming between now and getting the application finalized. And so he's got some wording on that. There was a conference call with the school attorney to get that wording right, and that took place yesterday morning. No, last Thursday morning, excuse me. I keep thinking today's a different day. Never mind.
I know, the snow is
Melding together.
It is.
mixing things
It
up.
is. Any questions? Anything more that we need to take back to the school facilities committee? Are there more coming?
Any more? Except for Carol will be running late,
Right.
but
But from the school contingent, if you're ready to go, we're ready to go. Don't take your coat off because it's not going to get any warmer in here.
for Tom, do you want to introduce everybody? So he knows.
Hope everybody has their binders with them. I have updates for you that I've made copy of, so maybe I'll pass those out. If
Okay.
you just want to chat amongst yourselves for a minute.
While he's doing that, I'm going to
But
pass
I'm
out.
saying, with this group, we all need to like walk in with our best little dates, you
I
know?
was actually just listening to Lizzo.
Every time.
For anyone
it
that,
comes on, especially.
didn't want to use their own ink on the revised calendar,
I love that song.
I didn't ask Kelly to print us a calendar.
That song makes me happy.
I was
myself
saying
to
to
do it.
somebody, like, not that we didn't have them. It's so awesome.
And watch out for that.
Yep,
That generation.
yep.
Bright yellow.
And also, I think that people forget that it's also awesome to watch, thank you so much for boys to watch girls feel like so empowered and so amazing. I totally agree. We overly focus on the girls, but I'm like, we have both boys and girls.
Chris, how are you?
Had to change them both at the same time.
The reason we've got an updated calendar,
What is it?
Thank you. How are you, Nate?
Yes,
As they say,
I have not seen this beard before.
oh yes, it's been growing slowly.
Just in case.
I
don't think I've seen it be a
She's
spoke.
over on that, there's two empty ones, but I don't know which seat she's gonna be, over there or over here.
There is an attachment, but no, say before that's going to.
Thank you,
We
Scott.
could save it for,
Is this
here.
is this-
Save it
Oh, I have a binder, but it's in the car.
here. You don't save anything, okay, I'll ask Michael.
SAU and SAU.
Thank you. Possibly.
Thank you,
I
Mrs.
was like, I
Souza.
don't- this seat is messy. You know, first basketball last night, I was like, seeing you represent, thank you.
Chris, you ever
Good
feel like you just
varsity
want to get
game.
away from all of us?
Thank you, sir.
I understand.
Oh, I'd like,
Thank you.
Oh, no.
Which one do you have, which is?
talking about
Maybe
it
one more?
last week.
Yes, that's the, sorry to disturb.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have like 1 minute?
Thank you, sir.
It's working.
Do we have a separate tab for the school budget? What's that? Is there a separate tab for the school budget?
That's the first.
Okay, are you lining up the other, what goes where? Okay,
Somebody else wants that right now.
Biggest spot, right?
so unprepared, I did not bring my paper clips.
That's right, I give them to you bound. I mean, like, whole bunch for you.
And which one is
Warren.
this?
I can't.
the reason that you all got a new calendar is because there's a change in mid-January where the
Thank you, sir.
school budget public hearing, the school budget public hearing is now on January 16 instead of January 9. When I was putting the calendar together, based on the dates available from the state, I did not pick up on the idea that warrant articles didn't have to be in until January 10. So to have our public hearing and then have other warrant articles come across after our meeting didn't make a lot of sense. So the school picked up on that and asked that we schedule that out to January 16, and so I swapped the town agenda for that, for what was on the 16th. That is now on the 9th. That's
Okay, yeah.
the difference in this new
Flip-flop.
December 16 revision.
Okay,
Are you still passing stuff out?
Tax and I've only got two things after this. Tax and
We're gonna have to have a half an hour for binder management here.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Tree.
I really do wish I had more.
How are you?
Thank you.
I don't see a tab for preschool. Am I missing it?
I think it goes just to CSU.
Revenue estimate?
Revenue.
Is there any difference between these two?
If one's, no.
Thank you. That's okay. Thank you.
Revenue.
Folks, I'm passing out the last thing, and it's a new report. So I think you might just want to stick this in the back of your budget tab. But this is a report that separates your high school costs and pulls them out. It's not in addition to your operating budget, it's just a report that comes out of your operating budget.
Would you write of the bus driver that's retiring? There's a pen, piece of paper. Yeah. It's just it's a laundry list. I can come in the morning.
Thank you.
I just put it all in that.
I can come in the morning. I have a lot of them, sir.
This is good left brain, right brain type.
I took it. Not at the budget. Thank you, sir. I knew the last name. I couldn't think of the first name to save me. Thank you, sir.
You know, I said I was done, but I just found one more thing.
More information
We
is
were waiting
better.
for that one thing.
I was wondering where it was. The default budget.
Oh, yes. Were you a comedian in college or something?
I'll tell you what I was.
The stand-up on the weekend.
Yeah. Should I get up and like get our
know. I'm telling, thank you, it's warmer in here than in my house, so I'm fine.
What's that?
Only a 66,000 difference between the default and the, that's minuscule.
I'm happy to introduce everybody.
When we're ready.
Are you guys ready? Awesome. So, Tom, we have our principal, Mr. Chris Souza. We have Nate Byrne, our Director of Student Services. We have Scott Bruning, who is our superintendent. We have Kathy Brosnan, who is a school board member, and Ms. Sue Levinson, who's also a school board member. You guys all ready to go? Michael, how do you want to do it?
We've got a lot of different items here, but if we could start with the budget and the changes to the budget from the last time we saw it.
Yep. Mr. Roning, do you want to have at it?
So there were some note corrections. There was also, I sent an email making some corrections. I hope you got that information. It was like a FICA correction of $76.50. There were some note corrections for typos and clarification. The changes to the budget, there was a reduction in the building maintenance line when we get to that. The building principal analyzed that line and reduced it from 25,000 and change down to 20,700. There was a reduction out of the attorney and negotiator line and sort of a transfer into a school board consultant line. With everything that's going on in the school board, that was prudent to budget for some, potential consulting services to do with building or projections, enrollments, and this and that.
Scott,
Yep.
were these sent to me?
No, because the changes,
Yeah.
no, I sent those to your representative before,
Okay.
but there's more. So remember, I made those changes last time, in between, but the board met last night, so you wouldn't have gotten any record of changes until tonight,
Okay.
from last night to tonight.
Okay.
Does that
Scott,
make
I think the
sense?
confusion is that you started off by
Yeah.
saying you sent the changes and then
Right,
went
I
into
did.
what we did
There were
last
some
time.
questions last time, I sent those and answers. And then since last night, there's been those changes, and there's only one more change after that, is under construction services. The board added $2,000 to anticipate any services that they may need in the upcoming budget.
So, Michael, do you want them to go through section by section, or do you want, again, us to just talk about the changes from the last time that we saw it?
I think going through section by section, if we can do that with pretty good speed, but focusing on the changes as we come across those. Is that a possible way to go about it? Does that suit everybody's needs? Okay, let's go with that then.
And Scott, do you want to do it, or do you want me to do you guys? wanna-
Whatever the board would like, what I would like is just 30 more seconds to organize myself.
Sure. Sue? There you go.
I'm taking a soft skills workshop, and silence is a good thing to like be comfortable with. It's actually good.
A little more silence in my life.
Yeah.
I agree. I was going to say, definitely a principal would need more silence in his
I heard sit on a swing, touch my elbow.
silence without the question, what's wrong? Just trying to be silent.
You guys aren't doing very well.
I was laughing at myself of the hypocrisy as I said it.
It's just a placeholder for it.
We're an empty nesters. We've been on the other side for a while, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Actual
Mr. Keister, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Bigger table. Gonna need a bigger table.
Couple of them.
Do you want me to lead you change by change, or page by page?
Page by page, and then hit the changes with some emphasis.
Right, okay. So, page 1, there's no changes to from the budget that you looked at?
Previous one was,
Uh,
which date?
11/7/2019 is when I emailed it.
We've got a printed copy, printed 11/21.
Right, right. So it's they're the same. They didn't change since then,
Okay.
so from your 11/21. If you see a change that I missed, please feel free to
Teacher
point that out.
salaries.
Yep, your track changes came in. Your track changes are due by November 1st. By December 1st, one of those days, so your track changes are in there now. I have to look at the CBA, but it's either November 1st or December 1st. Page 2.
Excuse me, when you say track changes, could that be also vertically? Somebody goes from a bachelor?
No, your steps are included. Your steps are, because you have an evergreen clause in your contract that even when the contract's under negotiation like it is this year, people get steps, those steps are calculated in there. The track changes have to do with bachelor's, specialty, masters. So those, in the CBA, those are due for budgeting purposes the year before it happens. So.
Okay.
If we look at page 2, I believe that is same as it was before. On page, yep.
Page 2, the health insurance, for some reason the adopted went down. Is that just a correction, typo, whatever?
No, we try to base everything on your current staff. So you may have had staff members that either retired or moved on last year.
So how would that change the previously adopted?
He's talking about the 1920.
The 1920s.
Change from the prior, so the adopted should be staying the same,
Yes,
and he's noting a change from the last,
John, what date's on the report that you have? Because mine's the same.
The
11/21.
11/7?
Oh, I have 11/21.
Okay, well, I probably got that in here someplace then.
should be.
So maybe that's what I'm looking at, it's the wrong one. Hang on. Looking at 11/21. Maybe that was one of the ones that was previously noted. Okay, I found 11/21. Okay, yeah, it had changed, but it was not previously noted for some reason.
Does anyone else have questions on page 2?
Page 3. Your FICA substitute coordinator line's been adjusted.
I don't see any changes on that page.
I'm sorry.
I don't see any changes on page 3.
Yeah, I think I made those. This is your third version.
0.5, yeah.
There was a 0 there before. We corrected that.
I'm looking at 11/21 to
Yeah.
12/19.
Right, and then your retirement line is going to be different too because of your track changes. Sorry, I had a question for the gallery. 4. So in between your first version, your second version, and your first and second version, your tuition increases came in? Question is on page 4. Page 5. On to page 6. Any questions on page 6? On to page 7. top of page 7, that closes out your regular ed function and starts your special ed function. On to page 8.
Just a question on the ESY elementary salaries. Again, the adopted was different.
Well, are you on page 8, Mr. Decker?
The count ends in 801.
Second one down.
Oh, sorry, actually, no, it's actually the one above it. Which is, sorry, it's 800. I was reading the account name
Yep.
with the wrong line again.
So what was your question?
It looks like the adopted from previous year had gone, you know, the 2019, 2020 adopted went down by like $400. Something like, was that right? I'm sorry.
From
1,400.
from the last.
20, yeah. I'm just curious.
Yeah, yeah. So try to remember that we're in the process of adopting a new ERP system.
Right, and that's,
So when we vet through, we may find,
so it was probably a typo correction or something?
no, it's probably an import error from the original import. So what happened, there was the original import done, we developed budgets, the business administrator came back from leave, started reconciling lines and taking a look at things. So you may see some
Yeah, and
differences there.
that's all, I just want
Yeah, I would just want to.
double checking, that's all.
Yeah, I really want your launch of your ERP system to be as clean as possible, so if I have people going back and verifying and changing things.
Appreciate that.
That's the reason.
It was the one that ends in 800.
ESY elementary salaries.
It went from 22,100 to 26,0480.
But keep pointing those things out, because I make note of them to double check. Any questions on page 8? Any questions on page 9? On to page 10.
All right, yeah, so there were some changes with the teachers' retirement lines. But again, it looks like it was in the adopted piece.
The 5232?
5232, 800, yeah.
Retirement certified? Oh, FICA ESY. Yeah, so if they change the number in the salary line, that's going to tie in and change the number in your FICA retirement lines also.
Right, it just looks like something shifted column-wise.
From 2019,
So it had
2020 is,
it had $1.
Oh, all right. So your ESY lines are created by the business administrator to be able to tie into the DOE 25. So there is a holder, like the 22,000 holds in one account and then is billed, broken out after the ESY is complete. So we have a better read on what we spent per cent. It used to lump it into one line and then just bill it. But we can't really track information when we do that. So that may be one thing that you're seeing there.
So it's part of that cleanup again.
Yeah. Every year, you'll see
Right.
a lump number and a big line, and then as you look, no, it's fine,
Trying
I'm
to
glad you're
point them out,
asking.
that's all.
No, it's good. It's all good stuff, so. Any questions on page 10? On to page 11.
The new line for 2020, 165 to 160, roughly. 400, 5564, -000.
Actually, that count note goes with the one above, and actually, that's not, oh, that is a new line. But the note you're looking at goes to the account above.
Yeah, I find that very confusing.
Yep,
Oh, yeah.
yep.
Oh, so this
So
is
it's the
for
line
the
under it, the
preschool
special
about
ed preschool.
Stratford.
No, so he's talking about where it says this was a new line for 2020, right? So that goes with the 5563001. And what that is just $1 in a line because you have a regular ed line for tuition move-ins, although you don't use it right now. So a special ed line was created for the same purpose, with $1 in.
I think what Tom's asking is
A
on
decrease.
5564, the 2020-21, it shows 160, 614.49.
The last round, it was 165.
Previously, yeah, it was 165.
Yep.
760.
Yeah, because that's one change.
Okay.
So just an hour ago,
Literally.
literally.
Is this the one that,
Your
this
pre,
wasn't the one from last
I
night,
had a
right?
hearing on the preschool budget and the SAU budget, we did it tonight.
Okay.
We did it a couple weeks ago as well, but we had to adjust the postings.
There's a decrease because of restructuring. Stratford is no longer
That
part
was
of the
Stratford.
preschool, so that's a decrease because we're changing the structure and the services. That's why you're seeing it going from 165 down to 160. You don't get too excited, that doesn't happen often in special ed where the number goes down, but that is why.
Okay.
so
That
What
is
was-
a current, up-to-date number.
what was in there previously was a marker.
Yeah.
right? And there was a
Okay.
note in there that said, this note needs to be updated.
Right.
So,
But do you want to talk at all about the
We-
preschool?
I can
mean,
explain
we're
it a little more in
using-
detail.
We're using IDEA
That's
funds to
correct.
bring it down, and Northwood has decided they won't be charging rent. So that brings it down to $24,000. So Stratford decided that they will be having preschool at their own school, so there's now two of us sharing it. And we had a bigger portion of it before, and just it's.
Right,
Yeah.
so what has taken place with Stratford removing themselves from the preschool, and the number was gonna be greatly impacted, you would have been paying quite a bit more for your preschool services, because you're going from 3 districts down to 2. We made some changes in our contract of services, and it was still high. Northwood saw that and decided they were gonna forego the rent, which helped to reduce the cost, and it was still gonna be an increase, so in order to try to keep it steady, I contacted the DOE and asked them for permission to be able to write some of the preschool coordinator back into the grant as it had been in previous years due to restructuring. Typically, you can't do that because it's supplanting. You can't take something out of your budget and say, okay, we're gonna move it to IDEA. However, because you had a restructuring of your preschool and you lost funds from a district coming in, we weren't supplanting, we truly lost a fair amount of money from them paying in their tuition, so they said that we can do that. So that's what I had done. I paid for half of your, not half, a portion of your preschool coordinator out of the IDA to try to keep you at a steady level so that your preschool costs didn't spike.
Is it no longer based on headcount or?
it's still based on how many identified students you have in the program. So let me explain that a little bit, because people often ask, what's the enrollment of the preschool? The most static number that we use is the end of the year, because different than your K through 8 setting, your preschool is rolling admission based on age. So where a kindergartner starts at this age, a preschooler can start anywhere between the age of 2.5 and 3, right, or 4. So as you start the year, your census is relatively low. Your typical, because we try to do a 50-50 ratio, so we know how many slots we have, we try to get 50% of your typicals in, and then over the course of the year, as kids are identified and age in, your census goes up. So the most static number that we use is like the 630 census. Then, what we used to do was calculate a rolling 3-year average of those students, so you didn't see spikes in your budget if you had enrollments. Actually, as part of this budget, they decided to just split it 50-50 between the two towns.
Just for this year, though.
They'll have to decide what's going, also, I think Nottingham, as time goes on, may look at establishing their own preschool. I think that's a good idea for your students in that they transition earlier and they're used to school and what the setting is. Where right now, they're going to school in a different town, not the biggest issue in the world, but it's something to consider. So for this year, they're doing a 50-50 split, and Northwood is forgoing the rent. So it's a way to sort of stabilize things for everybody.
3-year average for just the 2 towns did come out to almost 50%.
Yeah, it's like 49-51. So.
Yeah, 49.2 and 50.8.
Yeah.
So it was, we just decided to go with the average.
Yeah.
Try to make it fair and consistent across.
On to page 12. Any questions on page 12? On to page 13.
Membership in the ESC,
Membership in the SESC.
that went down around 5,000.
Yeah, that's a special education support center. It's $250 a year. It's a section of the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. So what that allows is for your coordinator or your director to be able to access expertise in the area of special ed at no charge. No, right. Well, $250, yeah. Pay the $250, you get unlimited access. That brings you to your special education total of $2,032,732.28. Most of that increases tuition, and you have a tab in your folder that gives you some detail there. Medicaid administration cost, I think I probably covered that in depth at the last time I was here. We don't know what's going to happen with Medicaid, but we know that we want money in that holding line, that processing line, in case the emergency rule is reversed in February. And there actually has been, since the last time we met, some legislative activity, both at the state level and at the federal level, to try to address that problem. Any questions on page 13? On to page 14.
Me.
On to page 15. Any questions on page 15?
I have one question, and just want to make sure I'm on the right one here. 14, 20, 5,500, the repairs to the front softball field. Am I on the right page?
Yes.
So what kind of repairs are you referring to here? Is it going to continue?
Yes.
1420, 430, repairs to the front softball field, also volleyball court. This past year, we've walked on our girls' home, for lack of a better term. We had a softball field, a league field out front that had been used by NYA mostly in local towns, but hadn't been used by our school for reasons of it being not quite up to par for middle school competition. So the last 2 years, we put money little by little into it by grading it, bringing new sand, digging the outfield, we had some ledge in it, taking care of that, covering that up, reseeding, overseeding, working very closely with NYA. They helped with the fences, we're sharing some of the costs, and just updating it.
Is that still being used as a parking lot, though?
No, we, so that's been part of it as well. If you notice now, you drive by, you see it's all fenced off. There's still room for, we're thinking 20, 30 cars perhaps. It's gonna be no, like for voting and things, we're gonna need that, but we're keeping it all off the playable field. So that is now our home softball field. If I could, I'd bring the boys back too, from the town. We have some bus kids there, and then of course, we're competing with NIA for time, it's always a challenge, particularly in the middle of the spring. That's just money for upkeep.
Any more questions on page 15? Any questions on page 16?
We have two guidance counselors?
Yes. On to page 17. Your guidance total is $190,635.55. Any questions on page 17? On to page 18. Your nurse total on page 18 is $106,066.77. Any questions on page 18? On to page 19. Any questions on page 19? On to page 20. Your speech total is $192,131.32. your occupational therapy and physical therapy total is $109,306.32.
The contracted PT really went up, huh?
I'm sorry?
Contracted PT really went up 21%.
Yeah, that's based on student need,
Is it?
so.
So it has nothing to do with rates or anything like that?
I'm sorry?
Has nothing to do with rates?
Yeah, we put an escalator on your rate each year of 5%, just to
Okay.
cover what the increase will be from from Stratford Learning Center. Any more questions on page 20? On to page 21. Your improvement in instruction total is $80,883.42. Any questions on page 21? On to page 22. On page 22, your instruction and curriculum development total is $128,989.20. It's on to your library section. Page 23. Any questions on page 23? Page 24. Your library and educational media total is $151,434.99. Any questions on page 24? On to page 25. Any questions on page 25? On to page 26. Any questions on page 26?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is, with a number of textbooks, including licenses for software, is that billed back to the textbook account, or is that included in one of the software lines?
When you purchase a textbook, it usually comes in the textbook lines with that access to the software.
Okay.
If there's no hardcover book or no book that was with it, then that would just be the software line.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions on page 26? On to page 27? Page 27, halfway down the page, 01-2310-559-0001. That's the $5,000 line I was talking about earlier.
That came from the next page.
Took it off the next page. Yep. Any questions on page 27? On to page 28. I might point out, just for fun, because this is a $349,000 percent, 349%, yeah. So your GASB 45 compliance doesn't need to be done every year. So that's why you see it going 0, 3,000, 0, 3,000. And then your audits and function audit, I'm sorry, your function election services is 1,000, your function audit services total is 13,500.
Which line?
The function total for audit services, 2317,
Oh,
halfway down the page.
all right,
Underneath the GASB note.
yep.
Then the next line underneath that is the attorney and negotiator that 15,000 was taken out of and shifted into that consulting line in the previous page. So your legal services total is $15,000. Underneath that, same with the preschool, moments ago, your SAU 44 district, your SAU 44 budget was approved. And so that's your new number. And we're going to go back and change that function title. Because that is not right. Oh, no, it is right. I thought I said student, superintendent services total. That is correct. Any more questions on page 28? I just did it without glasses, yeah, until I read superintendent per student. Here we go.
Is the principal and assistant principal, are you on some kind of a merit pool?
Are we on page 29?
I was just thinking about the two salaries for principal and assistant principal.
I'm sorry,
What was your question?
On page 28, the last line there,
Yep.
principal salary, it went up 3%.
Subject to review, yep.
Right, and the assistant principal went up 5%. Now,
That's-
my question was, is it a merit pool?
No, the reason that the assistant principal's line went up is that the board last year, at the end of the year, when it came time to contract, increased the assistant principal's pay to remain competitive. So that throws your budget total off a bit. What's really budgeted is for a 3% increase subject to review. But because that adjustment was made in the previous year, it shows as 5%.
Okay.
Any more questions on page 29? On to page 30. Here's where you can see the differences in the old financial system and how it operates as opposed to the new financial system. When you put a position in the new financial system, it creates the accompanying fringe lines. Before, everything was lumped together. So you'll see, like in FICA principal, you can see in previous years where that was almost $20,000. It's because it included more than just the principal. So now it's all broken out. Any questions on page 30? On to page 31. Any questions on page 31? On to page 32. The office of principal total is $427,903.30. Any questions on page 32? And your bookkeeping function at the bottom of that page is $1. On to page 33. Any questions on page 33? Any question, on to page 34? Any questions on page 34? Sorry? Yep. For weekly trash pickup? Oh, yeah.
What's that, Susan?
There's a typo in the,
I want to change the word hour to hour.
Oh, okay.
yeah. Yep. Thank you. Oh, please do it.
Yeah, the correction's right.
Any questions on page 34? On to page 35. Any questions on page 35?
What kind of things do you do under the top line there, repairs and maintenance building? Because I noticed that the budget is somewhat consistent. Are there certain aspects or certain things that are done every year, like repetitively?
Yes. I mean, the note talks about repairs to like the doors and the ambulance and the testing that we do. So there's reoccurring repairs and maintenance that has to happen. That's the majority of that. Septic tank pumping, elevator repair, module repair, pump repair, alarm communication that comes in. And these are regular updates because it's not just repairs, it's making testing repair. Our windows are in need of repairs and replacement in some cases, so we're doing that ourselves as opposed to just
So you're replacing some windows per year?
yeah, mostly we're trying to repair them and extend their life as long as we can.
Okay.
Also insulation, sheetrock, and heating plan around the offices. Some of the doors are rotting out, so we're doing some work on that. Particularly there's one door that we're working on, and that's included in that's the A1 door frame, which is for one of the student entrances. Those familiar with the school, it's the last, as you're leaving the front circle, the last door. After you need to be completely left, for about $10,000.
Would you say the majority of that money is for maintaining versus repair? I think of repair as one thing and maintaining as sort of an annual, you know, like an elevator. You come in every year, you maintain it, you know.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, I would think that, for instance, a lot of the windows, it may be caulking. So, to me, that's regular maintenance, for someone to
Right.
look at that and say, well, you're actually repairing the caulking. But yeah, I would say this is mostly maintenance work.
I was just curious.
Did I understand you correctly? You said the door was $10,000? A door?
Yep, yes.
Is that one main door in the front?
The exterior door, to replace the entire frame.
So we're looking at the building, it's not the main entrance, you said it's the one all the way to the left?
Correct.
And that's not,
BD's old room.
say again?
Yeah.
That's President Dowsland's old room. I should use the new teacher's name, but everybody knows
It's
that
always
light's
gonna
on
be Miss
24 hours a
BD's.
day.
Mr. Bartlett, as part of the facilities committee, when we were working with the architect on design, he did point out that steel doors were very expensive.
I get that, but $10,000?
Well, that door, if the new school goes, the plan
Part of the
goes through.
CIP,
We can
he had
keep
just
it.
pointed out some other
You can keep
doors
the
that were
door,
steel.
okay.
And commented how expensive the steel doors were as opposed to the aluminum. So, different
Not just the
doors,
door, too. I mean,
same components.
entire frame repairs.
Okay.
You're in the wrong business.
Apparently so.
Any more questions on page 35? On to page 36. About halfway down the page, 2635 000 was the ground maintenance line. Then in the previous budget was 25 and change, and now it's been reduced to 20,700.
Oh, so it's just going back to the year before.
Yep. Any questions on page 36? On to page 37. Any questions on page 37? Hearing none, on to page 38. About two-thirds of the way down the page, 4,600, 5450 000 construction services, that's the $2,000 that I mentioned earlier. Any questions on page 38?
Just a comment that the previous budget or handout had a bunch of warrant articles and things, and I assume that got moved someplace else, or it just is not necessary anymore because they're all zeros.
That's a complicated question. So, so what I did to run this budget, we're learning a lot about report functions, like that high school cost report that I gave you is one of the report functions that we discovered we could mask lines and create separate reports to help with things like that. The issue that happens is those lines are in the process of being updated.
Yeah.
So I need to create a separate report for you folks to see your trust fund balances, right?
Okay.
If I include those in the body of the budget unmasked, then it adds to your totals. So what I did for this is mask those lines, hid them. Then when they're updated, we'll be generating a separate report that shows trust fund balances so they don't affect your history or operating budget. So the four, the library warrant number 4,
Yeah.
the special ed trust, the building repair, and the grounds improvement, and the textbook warrants are all masked in there. Does that help?
Yeah.
Those are all
Yeah.
capital reserve funds.
Right. Any,
Special reserve funds, some of them.
any questions on page 38? On to page 39?
Health insurance. Wait, no, sorry. Sorry. No, I was just off a line.
Now you're testing us because you guys are from the old to the new.
It could give you a headache.
You'll get used to it. We did. I didn't think we were gonna. Any questions on page 39? On to page 40. That finishes your food service total of 186,761.07, and then gives you your grand total of 13,762,712.55 for $590,568.28 increase, or 4.48%.
Why would your 2019-20 adopted budget go up by 1,998 over the November budget? The adopted budget wouldn't change, would it? I'm just trying to understand the difference.
The adopted budget could change,
That was those 2 lines that I pointed out earlier.
right? Which 2 lines were those?
Way back. All right?
ESY, correct?
Yeah, ESY was one of them, and then the second one that you guys took a note on.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. I'm not
Yeah, I was
sure,
just curious, I mean,
I'm not sure exactly, could you,
I'm looking at the November proposed budget, which was for 2019-20, it was 13,170,145. Now it's 13,172,143.
So not the proposed, but the adopted.
Yeah, they adopted, 2019-20.
okay.
Yeah, there was two lines that I,
And that probably
Usually they
totals,
don't change what
it
they're
probably
adopting.
totals those 2 lines.
Page 8 was the import error.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Okay, I'm just curious.
All right. We'll take a look at that. Your budget,
it's like 4 changes really from the last time.
right, right.
Which summarize about $1,900 total increase over the November.
Mr. Keister, where would you like to go next? You want to review that high school report real quick?
Sure.
And this one doesn't have a tab, correct? This is a new report?
It's a new report.
It's,
So the sub-tab under the proposed?
Tab of the tab.
yeah, I just put it in the proposed, except I don't know where I put mine. Can I borrow yours for a minute?
I won't even charge
So-
you for it, so.
This is not an addition to your budget. This is just pulling those lines out because I think it's helpful for people to see what their elementary costs are as opposed to your high school cost. So your high school cost represents about 33% of your total operating budget. So if you, which isn't here, so you see that your high school cost rose by 7.65%. Your elementary cost, if I was, and I can do this, it just takes hours. If I separated a report with just your elementary school cost, which you can imagine with the amount of lines would be quite substantial, your elementary increase actually is 2.9% of your total operating budget. So that's just a supplemental report. If you find value in it, let me know, and if you don't,
No, I think that's great. So basically, if you take the totals from this, subtract them from, so if you take the totals from the one we just reviewed, subtract these totals, subtract, this, I assume includes the high school transportation and all that, right? Yeah. Subtract SAU, right? And,
yeah, we don't, yeah.
it's not in this
We leave it in
proposed
your,
one?
yeah.
SAU's in your proposed one.
Right,
in
that's what I'm
proposed.
saying.
Yeah.
So we take the proposed budget we just reviewed, subtract these high school numbers, subtract the SAU lines out, that would give us the elementary school. What else needs to come out?
That's one way to look at it. Your preschool special ed would come out,
Preschool special
yeah, I don't know if you want to like fracture it like that, but I hear what you're saying. You could do it that way.
How about the superintendent's office?
That's the SAU.
But yeah, I guess you could separate the school board, but
Yeah, and then,
that's minimal compared to.
right. I mean,
Yeah, it's small. And a lot of that school board has to do with
both,
the,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
the
right.
administrative.
And so does the
government
SAU,
school.
right. And the SAU has to do with both. So,
But I think, I get you.
yeah, I get what
I
you're
think
saying.
it's a
So-
good exercise.
Yeah. And that way you could actually see,
Your operating costs for your building, your school, your education, your contracts.
So, going forward, next year, this is something you'd like to see again?
yeah, I think that's pretty
Okay,
helpful.
all right.
But I guess what I'm hinting at is it may be helpful to see the other ones separated out as well. You know, these other pieces.
Not only you need the full report, just the total. Then they
Right,
reprint
right.
25 pages of.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it's important to separate high school, you know, if we want to get down to, see what elementary school is.
Well, the reason that we separate out the high school is because it's the one piece over which we have zero control. We just have absolutely no control, and as it keeps going, we can't control the number of students who locate in the town who need to go to high school, and we can't control the costs of high school. And so it's useful for us to understand the percentage of our budget over which we have zero control.
The one place that I'd propose that we maybe do have some control is year to year, if we identify that there's an overage of $300,000 in the high school area consistently, then we can take a look at how we might pare that down because of historical record that we know this is going to be over budgeted.
The only issue with that is that if we have students who come in the middle of the year, then what do we do? So, I mean, I guess it's a conversation about how much risk we want to assume.
Right. It is.
And the idea of, in our mobile, that's what I was thinking before when you asked, is that you have no control over the number. A family with 4 high school students could easily move into the town in January.
But a family with 4 elementary school students could easily move into town.
Well, they
too.
can too.
Right,
but
those are
they-
different.
Cost the same, right, I get it.
It's a marginal cost as opposed to a real cost. Yeah.
But we don't have a move-in, right?
budget, so
Well-
we're not even budgeting for moving.
We no longer have the 5 move-ins that we used
So I
to.
don't see how, I don't know where you could tighten up the high school budget, because we're not budgeting. for moving.
Well, what I'm,
The only thing that may go over is special ed if the special ed needs go down. The buses don't change.
yeah.
Do we pay
Well,
cost
but
per
actually,
student on the
it-
bus, or do we pay cost per bus?
Per bus.
Per bus.
Per bus, that's what I thought.
So if what happens is that at the beginning of the year, it turns out we don't have enough buses, every month we get a credit back. But obviously, instead of getting that credit, we'd rather have the bus.
Right, and that's the elementary bus that we don't
Right.
have, it's not the high school bus.
Right.
Right, are we, I know we didn't used to have to be, or I know we didn't have to have buses for high school kids in the past. Do we have to do that now per law?
You don't have to by law.
I didn't think so, so that's basically.
How are they going to get from here to Dover?
How are they gonna get home?
Great.
Well, no, I'm just saying,
We're
if you're
requiring their
purely
families to
looking
have
at
cars?
costs, if you're looking at costs that we have control over and not control over, that's the only thing that we actually have control over.
But I think that
I'm
would-
not saying to not do it, I'm just saying it is something that
I'm
we
just
have
saying
control over.
that I think that would come back, that would be an interesting thing, because it would be requiring people to own a car to transport their children to school, and their children are required to go to school. No,
I'm just stating what the law is.
It also requires them to be home in the afternoon to pick their children up.
Right.
I think a more interesting study, I think a
A
more
lot of these
interesting,
kids drive themselves anyway.
I taught down
They
at
get rides
Timberlane
with
for
their friends,
32 years.
Older
Um,
siblings.
I don't want
Tired
my
to hear.
freshmen getting a ride, no offense to said
know Jeff
friends
too.
that are older.
Like the 16-year-olds who can't drive over kids.
what my original comment goes back to is how we traditionally end up with several $100,000 going back to the town. And we start looking at where that happens, it's oftentimes an overage of projection to high school tuitions. And if we look at our enrollment reports.
This past year, because I don't think that
Yeah,
we
is
have
that-
that data.
Well, so that's what I'm not sure of. I guess I don't have anything that shows us year to year what our projected enrollment is and what our actual cost is for that year of that number of students. Typically, they've gone away someplace, a number of them. More have fallen off of the enrollment than have been added to. And that ends up being a significant portion of the excess amount that we turn back to the town. I'm okay with that so long as it's understood that high school tuition dollars are not used for anything else, any other line item. And typically, that's what this school board has been doing for us, and I appreciate that. But in terms of, for our budget committee to justify to the townspeople, well, yeah, we blew it by $700,000 this year. They start to wonder, what are we doing that causes us to overestimate the amount of appropriation?
I think it's a conversation you mentioned before.
Oh, every year.
Yeah, I think it is reasonable, and it's hard for us, we historically had difficulty trying to pinpoint what is creating that.
Yeah, I know this past year, there was an unanticipated revenue source that amounted to a lot of the overage.
Well, there's three.
I get that.
Yeah, there's 3 factors that figure in, and we've asked the auditors when they meet with the audit committee and with the boards to explain the complexities of the DOE 25. So there's 3 real factors in there that affect your return. The first factor is what you had left over at the end of the year, right? The second factor is what you brought in for unanticipated revenue, and you brought in some unanticipated revenue. And the third factor is they look at the cash at the beginning of the year and the cash at the end of the year. And if there's a variance there, that goes into your fund balance return. So there's 3 factors, 3 main factors that influence that. I want to be very clear that it's not all, this year was not all that was left over.
Sure.
There was quite a substantial amount that was in addition to that.
That is something
But
that's very important.
It's
to
very
us,
important.
That
It's very important to all of us to figure that
the
out.
auditors, the audit committee is independent, and is independently representing the boards, all the boards in the SAU. And that is one question that we do have, because I think all of the districts
Yep.
experienced higher than anticipated surplus funds. And so it's something that I know Nottingham was very interested in understanding, because looking at our monthly financial reports, it was not indicated that we would have the amount that went back that actually did.
Right.
So we would like to understand that.
So
And
the-
if there is a cash component, that's something that is also
Right.
of interest to us in understanding if that's consistently been managed or not. So we have a lot of questions for the auditors.
How do you determine the allocation of the surplus back to the towns?
Well, what happens, there's a couple of things that are going on. One is at the SAU level, they can continue to accumulate that balance year over year. So it's different from the individual districts that cannot. So at the SAU level, with the creation of the audit committee, one of the requests of the board was for the audit committee to look at that and come up with a fund balance policy, which they did. And so there are two separate budgets there, the preschool budget and the SAU budget. So there's a policy in place that is putting a recommended amount in place for the SAU to have for a balance that they can carry. The differences go back based on the apportionments that the districts are paying in. In the preschool, there's an agreement that if the preschool has an amount, that will automatically go back based on the same apportionments as went in. And if they're different, they're averaging it. So we did have money coming back last year because of that. So it was about 40,000.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but we did get money
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
And then you also have to look at sometimes your Medicaid reimbursements oftentimes lag, right? So we've budgeted for what we anticipate for revenue for a year, but if those payments come in after the books have closed, they tag into your next year's revenue, and they cause your revenues to go up, which isn't a bad thing. It just, so if there's a delay and, if there's a problem and all of a sudden $50,000 or $60,000, well, I would say $30,000 comes in July, that's going to, that's when they're looking at the cash in and cash out, right? So I also think that this is the second year of a new auditor, and I think that as they dive deeper into the history of, what's happened, that they may see that there hasn't been returns as they, do you know what I mean? Like cash, the big question I have is, what was the cash at the beginning of the year and what was the cash at the end of the year? Because it should really be, in your district level, reconciled out, right? Because you can't maintain a balance. So I'm not sure. We've asked that question. That's a question not only for the boards, it's a question for me. We had the auditors do the DOE 25 this year because of an illness in the business office, and did it last year too as a training mechanism for the business administrator. But we have the same questions that you folks might have when it comes to the return. But I just want to be clear that that return doesn't have everything to do with what was left at the end of the year.
Right.
If I can tie back to your tuition lines, this has been, it's about a 7-year conversation for me with Mr. Keister.
18 years.
Yeah, but I've only been here 7. So I do think, we have refined our budgeting. We look at your exiting seniors, we look at your entering 9th graders, and that's what we use. Yep, we call homeschool families to see if they're going to come in. Sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. we try very hard to budget for what we know, and what we know is we have this many exiting seniors, and we have this many entering, leaving 8th grade and entering 9th grade. And that's how we try to do it.
What you don't know is the new ones that are coming in from.
But I don't know the ones that are moving out either, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the ones that are moving out, and I don't know the ones that are moving in.
Right.
There are students that attend private school too, and it's another unknown. And they could
Yeah,
go
I mean,
K-8
just
private and then-
just last week, I got a call from a family in another district who were homeschooling up to this year, and they're entering 9th grade, and because of the way the state homeschool reporting is, we had no record of that student, because they were reported to another organization. So I called the family, I said, I don't mean to pry, but how many, do you mind telling me how many students you have in the house? And what grades they might be in? So I can plan for this, and it's just very nice, and gave me the information, but it creates a challenge when the way your legislation is set up, that there may be kids in your town that are homeschooled that I don't know about. So, I mean, that's a factor too. I can tell you that we stopped budgeting for anticipated move-ins.
You're budgeting down to the exact number of children that we
Yeah,
have, so
and-
there's no extras budgeted.
No, I mean, it hasn't caught us yet. Right.
So does this capture the new 8th grader that I know came in within the last month? Actually?
Probably not.
Yeah. It's just, there's never gonna be a,
What? Oh, but we had an 8th grader move too.
It's a moving
there
target.
was
So,
a wash.
yeah. Right?
Constantly moving.
Yeah. We had an 8th grader move too.
Yeah.
So yes, that's
I understand the
included.
logic behind it.
Yeah.
The logic is sound. The history is not. The history is skewed.
Right, and the future is hard to predict. So,
I don't know if you talked about it earlier, about how do we know the Dover tuition for 2021? I thought they just gave us the.
they just gave us this year's rate, and I just put an escalator on it to see if we could cover it. Yeah. And the escalator's probably low. Well, no, I put the escalator on that was this year's increase. And actually, I want to go back, because I don't think the board gave themselves enough credit there. When we talk about we have no control over this, they do have a little bit of control, and they asserted it this year. In the Dover tuition contract, it talks about if the tuition increases over X number of percent, then the board can open up negotiations and try to negotiate a lower rate. And your board did that, and they were successful. So they might not have a lot of control, but they have about 2.3% control this year.
Did that new school over there affect the rate much?
Big dollars.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. That school's beautiful, though.
No, I
So great,
know
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
Quite a bit.
yeah.
It increased the rate, you mean?
We're right now about 40%, 60/40.
Oh, he's talking about the rate, the tuition rate.
tuition rate.
You're talking about the split. Yeah.
Dover tuition
One-third.
rate
High school's one-third of the
year
budget.
over year for the last several years has been
Pretty
higher
high.
Higher than,
than
Extremely
Co-Brown is
high.
typically around 2.9.
One-third of the population, too.
In that area, 3.
this year was almost 4,
Yeah,
but
It would be interesting to do another report, but to see the
we have that somewhere.
side by side over the years
Yep.
of both.
Yep.
Yeah, I had that at one point, and that
Third, and
it was a significant.
Do they factor, when they set their rates for tuition, Dover, is it tied into what their increase in their budget is in terms of a percent? The cost of doing business?
I would have to have the tuition contract in front of me. I think
I was just
these
wondering.
folks might have more history than I.
They do have a clause in there that
Yeah.
speaks to an increase over their prior year. I don't remember exactly what it was. But the formula is detailed in the contract.
Ready to move on?
What's next?
What's next? Do you have a preference? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Keister, it's your meeting. I was just going to go through what I passed out with, I was just going to go through your binders now, right?
Okay.
For you. The default budget that in there is a draft. It still needs to, I've asked the board to review it in detail and make any adjustments. I do know, I want you to have the default to review and see if you have any questions to bring back to me. I don't think we need to review it in its
How
entirety.
different is it?
What?
How different, just kind of overall?
The difference? I would have to look.
I could look too.
We have
It's 66,000
66, yeah, it's about $66,000
between the
lower.
proposed and the,
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
can you articulate what that 66,000 is between the proposed and the default?
Not tonight.
Not tonight, okay.
But I wanted to give it to you as a draft, because the board hasn't even fully reviewed it yet either.
Okay.
So, and I know you're not required to vote on it, but I wanted you to have it. So, because there's a lot of sets of eyes in this room, if you have any questions and give them to Rosalind, I can answer those. Defaulting has changed over the last year, there's a big change in the default. So why your default budget seems so much thicker and heavier than your operating budget, it's because of the amount of detail that's required in the notes to meet the change in the RSA. But if you go through that, Mr. O'Sullivan, actually before his departure, did a nice job trying to give you lots of different columns in your defaults. So there's one you're looking at last year's operating budget with any contractual obligation adjustments in the default language. There's another column in between that just shows you what this year's proposed is. When you do your comparison, compare the other two columns. For instance, if you turn to your default on page 1,
Paraprofessional salaries.
yeah. So if you look at your teacher salaries, you can see what the proposed and the default amount is, which are the same in that, but if it was a different line, such as, hold on for a second.
So that's where we'd see the differences between.
Yeah. Yeah, although really, our attorneys encourage us not to compare the proposed to the default. It's really the default to the last year's. But as long as you're aware of that, I think it's helpful.
Yep.
So I don't know if you want to go through that or go through it on your own, or it's going to come back with some adjustments, but it is quite substantial. And
it's cold.
so if you want to flip to the next tab, this is all draft information based on, and there's an error in here. So it doesn't change your tax rate, but if you look at the Nottingham School District estimated school tax rate information, and you look down the 2021 budget, that number should be 13,762, not 4. Make that adjustment for next time.
I'm sorry, where?
Where are you at?
Yep, if you're on this form,
The operating budget.
okay?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
only one
if you look
thing.
at your operating budget, it says 764, it should be 762. Lots of different spreadsheets running this week, so I apologize for that. It does not affect the rate, that amount of money.
2 cents to
13,
No,
13,764, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it should be 13,762,
Yeah. you just-
Okay, 764 goes to 762.
correct.
All right.
And then we'll bring you updated ones that'll have new numbers, but I will tell you that if you're looking at your estimated tax rate, it's not going to affect it, because I've seen the spreadsheet that's correct. We did fix it. The next report is just a current revenue report. I do think it'd be helpful for you if I pulled, a 6/30/19 year-end revenue report for you. just because then I think you can see the unanticipated revenue,
Okay.
just so you have it. I just made a note.
Everybody warm enough?
What?
Everybody warm enough? I'm having some heating issues, so.
Is it okay to put a
I
card in
heard,
the trash can?
yeah. The crazy thing about that is I heard that when I was up in Northwood.
By step, proposed SAU budget?
No, I need the proposed revenues. Sorry, I did such a good job filling your binders.
It's redacted, it looks like a Senate report.
I didn't think I got one.
We just don't need that part anymore.
Excuse me, I just couldn't need to go back to the box.
Yeah, but that probably would not be, that probably would not go over well.
I did notice that the CIP report is. That one is just for the so they have an 85.
Let's take a look at the warrant articles for now. All right, so.
But you go back on, it's permitted.
Article 4 is a tie-in warrant article, that's what things I want to know about, and I'm going to vote on it just to last for special meeting. Article 5. Dollars out of the year fund balance, capital reserve account. They just didn't.
Lucky enough to be able to share a bus. If you can't share a bus, buses alone right now are usually about $250 a day.
What facility do you use the most for?
Actually, if you flip to,
Special education out of district.
you'll see your 3 current placements.
Those are your 3 current, I want to say.
Oh, who do we use for a bus company?
I mean, when you place students out,
It depends on the specific student needs. So we don't favor one specific placement area. It depends on that student because different facilities have different specialties, and that's where we start to look at. We do try to look at the closest ones first as a preference because of the, not just because of the transportation cost, but because of the amount of time the student will be on a bus that can predict their success or failure in a placement. Because if you have a student on a bus for an hour and a half one way, that's 3 hours of their day in transit. They can be a little tired by the time they get there. They can be really tired by the time they get home. It's not very successful. So that's what we kind of look at. We look at regional first.
And then your next article, Article 9, this has gone through some morphing over the last couple of weeks. So let me back up before we read Article 9. I think everybody understands that there was a continuing resolution from July 1 until September to get a biennial state budget passed. Part of that was an adjustment in the adequacy formula to include a one-time payment that can be used for, oh, this is where it gets confusing. It's really fiscal disparity, but the legislature was calling it infrastructure. And the reason the legislature was calling it infrastructure is it goes away after a year, so they weren't recommending that you use it for a position because that would create a funding cliff. And then we did some work with the attorneys, with your potential building issues coming up, after a lot of conversations about whether to place into a trust fund or use a special warrant article. The attorney's recommendation and through the conference call and conversations with the board produced Article 9. The reason I don't have a money total in Article 9 is I know what the one-time money is. It's 117,500 something, or 353, 117,353. We're waiting for the architects, and we just had a meeting tonight, and I asked them to give me those numbers, and then I'll work with the board on what they want that number to be in the warrant article. But there will be no additional tax impact. I mean, that is a one-time grant that's going to go away. And so that's Article 9.
So this is the amount that we had previously said could be approximately 90,000, and now we're saying it could be as much as 170.
Yeah, I think with the state requirement of the owner's rep, there'll be some increased costs there.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been talking about at the Facilities Committee is the state regulation for projects like this to require a essentially a project manager that oversees the whole thing, not just the general contractor, but the management of the whole project. The state is requiring such a position be part of this project. And so that's going to cost some money, and we're going to need to bring that person on probably within the next 6 months or less. And so that's where we're going to need to get some money set up or in short order.
where would that money come from?
That would come from this 117,000
Oh, okay,
one-time grant.
That's why.
As well as some upfront costs for the architects that have done
Yeah.
their work, so.
Take a look.
We're trying to get a number that will get us enough funding so that we can properly present for building. We had a meeting this afternoon with a civil engineer from the Department of education that works with building, and she gave us a lot of information. A lot of it was very new information. This owner's rep is new law. So even the timeline, really, I'm still processing a lot of this because the timelines are a lot tighter than we had initially anticipated. And there are a lot more details as to what you can apply for, and square footage, and what's allowed.
Where do you find such a project manager? Does it have a list of
Yeah, she said.
potential people that you could hire, or?
She said these are a known role, and
Right.
there are people that are qualified to fill them, and architects know who
Right.
they are, and construction firms know.
We've already started to compile a list of local companies that do this in great yard. So we're getting ready to send that.
Good.
I have a question on the Article 7, basically, not on the article itself, but we talked about some of the softball fields being updated and stuff like that. Can that money be expended from this fund?
That volleyball field you're talking about?
You could, if the board, yeah, they're the agents that are in control of expending. If the board decided to do that, that would be permissible.
For instance, we've had some work done years ago, some studies done about putting a baseball diamond in the backfield. UNH had done a study. If that's something that we want to look at, that might be perfect to use or something, like project that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of where we could maybe save some money in the actual budget. If we're putting money aside to fix the grounds, then, so. Something to consider.
I have a question. It's a little bit off topic, but I believe there was a meeting with the Board of Selectmen last week regarding the use of impact fees.
This week.
Monday.
It was canceled due to
Oh.
the snow.
No.
Another cancellation?
We met with
They
them
have it.
Monday.
Yeah.
At the Monday.
They're taking all their information under advisement, and they'll get back to us.
Okay. Thank you. Carry on.
Any more questions on warrant articles?
I'm just curious, you mentioned 90,000, now it's up to 117.
No, your total.
So that's not because of the impact fees, you haven't got a, so this is,
Different.
so it's gone up since Monday.
Yeah, well,
It's been a range for, I'd say, the last month or so. We thought initially it would be about 90, but then we had the owner's rep conversation. The architect is looking at it, they're still fleshing out exactly what the line items need to be and costing it out. They're going to give us a number shortly, we asked this evening. So I still think there could be some upside in that number. He's telling us it could be lower than, but right now, I think we said today, back in napkin, about 117.
Yeah, but the 117 number also is the amount of the one-time grant.
Okay.
So don't get confused. We're not sure what the architects, we know I think it was 119. Somewhere between 90 and 119, he's going to give us those numbers. That has nothing to do with your impact fees, number one. Number two, the 117 is the award from the state for the one-time use.
So I think there's three different, we came to you, to the Board of Selectmen the other evening for around $27,000 of
Yes.
impact fees
Yes.
to pay for what the architect was doing in civil and mechanical engineering, to draw up a sheet that we received tonight that has an estimate as to the entire cost of the addition, including some soft costs and various other items that are in addition to the construction. So that work is.
So the impact fees wouldn't help reduce that number? This is above and beyond
this is something different.
something
So
different? All right.
We're proposing that we go to the townspeople twice around this building project. First time, asking them for funding that will put us in a position to put an appropriate application before the state and fulfill all the requirements to be reviewed for building aid. And it could cost up to 117.
Okay.
And Mr. Rooney is saying that, and the board, is that potentially we could use this one-time adequacy money that's coming to us to pay for that. And we put that in the warrant article to the community.
Okay.
So is the grant I mean,
Yeah.
basically that's already guaranteed. So as
It's-
long as
it-
that estimate is not over what the grant is, it costs the town nothing.
Simply, yeah. So here's, I have your 2021 adequacy and one-time grant estimates from the state, right? Everybody does, right? So if your October 1 enrollment of next year, October 1 or end of the year, either you end of your beginning enrollment, this data that's submitted to the state, I have to look, determines what that number will be exactly. So if you have more, then it's going to be greater. If you have less, it's going to be less. I don't anticipate that
Big
your numbers are
change.
gonna change that much. But the brace for that is actually in the document that I thought I passed out that I didn't, and now you have. So if you want to tie back to this. Let's jump down to underneath total revenue. I'll go through this from the top, but let's just finish this conversation. So you see your New Hampshire adequacy grant. Generally, in the past, what we've done is you've taken your 1920 adequacy number and applied 95% and used that as a safe estimate for revenue. This year, with the DOE giving those numbers in November, we can actually take 95% of your estimated amount for next year, which makes it a little more precise, and put that 1925, that 1.9 million number. So that represents 95% of the adequacy grant, including that one-time payment. So there is, we've been conservative in that number by 5%.
All right.
So that should, if there's any shortage, that should be covered. So,
So that 117 is in this number.
yeah, it's included in your total formula. So with that, if we go back up to the top, let's go over some of your revenue shortfalls you're going to experience this year. Medicaid reimbursement, we projected 0 because we don't know what's going on with Medicaid right now. So we don't know if we're going to have those reimbursements that you've had in the past, which run between $64,000 and $70,000 in the last 2 years alone. So we've reduced that to 0 because of the emergency rule in effect. You had a fund balance return in 18-19, that isn't recorded in 19-20 yet, but there's your number, you're 57, right, Sue? Is that it?
The 57,139?
Yeah.
That
Was
was
that a previous year?
unanticipated
Yeah.
for 1819. I think that was
Yeah.
probably, that's where it came back from.
Yeah. So we're not anticipating unanticipated revenue right now. This is updated, so we updated your revenue 18-19. We can't really, and once we anticipate unanticipated revenue, then it becomes anticipated revenue.
So that's always trailing.
Yes, that's always
But it
trailing.
comes fast.
Oh.
Funny how that works.
So your revenue, went from 360 to 240 to 189. So that's a concern, and I think I brought up that concern at our first meeting. And then the rest of your numbers, that one does have the correct number, 13,762, it's just another sheet I need to fix. And then if we go down to the bottom, And this is a trailing situation too. So if you look at 18, 19, you're 629. That was your return that dropped your tax rate down to 1479. So if you look at the top row where it says estimated tax rate, estimated as the budget says now is 1652. It was estimated last year at 1612. It came in at 1479. Of course, I can't tell you what is going to happen down below 2021 yet because it's not the end of the year.
That year, that's why. That's one of the reasons.
Oh. So, Mr. Burns is going to speak.
Again, when you were concerned about some of the money coming back to town that was much higher, and it made it look like the budget was overinflated. Remember, you had asked the question earlier, what does it cost for one student out of district? Well, in that year, you had 2 students come back ahead of schedule because we were able to bring them back, they transitioned back in. So when you had 2 students come back into district that were budgeted to be out of district, you're looking at close to $200,000 that came back in from special education tuition that was planned on being spent, that wasn't required. So that's a huge jump. I get that that's not all of it, but that's another key factor you have to think about. One student placed out, and then all of a sudden they either move or they come back into the school because they're doing so well. If you budgeted $140,000 for the student or $120,000, and then they move back in, you're getting all that back. That's going to be an unforeseen cost or an unforeseen revenue at that point, especially with the return. So
Medical insurance is also a tough one to budget.
that's true.
A lot of times it comes in less than what you anticipate.
Yeah, I mean, if I look across the 3 districts and I look what lines hold money at the end of the year, tuition, special ed sometime, hopefully, right? And benefits. And sometimes, with a fair amount of retirements, your salary lines, right? Because you're budgeting for what you know when you know it.
Somebody retires, you bring them in for 35,000 versus
Well, you can see it in
what they left
your,
at.
you can see it in your proposed budget when you look at your guidance lines. You can see that there was a change of employment there. One staff member out of a line that contains 2 dropped it by, I think, $10,000. So I've reviewed the sheet I couldn't find, so I apologize for that. Your staff list, of course, I need to update your staff list to reflect the track changes. You probably wouldn't notice that, the way it's constructed, but I wrote a note for myself to do that and bring that back to you. Health and dental insurance rates. Again, we know your GMR. Your guaranteed maximum rate last year came in at exactly what they predicted. So we budgeted at 3.9% GMR this year, expecting the same to happen. After that, there's your special education out of district placements. And I do want to go over that a little bit. So I'm not going to bore you with the actual formula, but when you have high-cost placements like that, you take 3.5 times the state average tuition, multiply it out, you're responsible for those costs. After that, you're responsible for 60% of the, 60% of the cost, up to 10 times the average tuition rate in the state of New Hampshire. And then after that, the state is supposed to pick that up. But what happens is they never have enough money in that pool, so they have an appropriation reduction at the state. So some of those costs you do get back, not at the rate you pay or the rate prescribed, but that's included in your special education aid projection back on your revenue sheets. And the next are your special education transportation costs. The tab after that is empty because that ties back to the warrant article and the fact that you're not done with negotiations with your teachers. I did put a collective bargaining agreement in for your perusal for the paraprofessionals. I give you a 10-1 enrollment report because that's your beginning of year enrollment that we filed with the state. And then you have your SAU 44 budget, your preschool budget, and your SIP, which needs to be updated. Preschool. Yeah, we don't have any.
Here.
That makes sense.
This is last year's.
Excuse me.
Does the committee have any other questions for the administration? Thank you for being here.
Everybody have a warm holiday.
Thank you, you as well.
And next time, maybe we'll have some Boy Scouts here.
Yeah. That and sugar.
Twice as big as it was before.
Yeah. We didn't teach the same grade level. I taught 8th grade math.
You don't like it?
Yeah, yeah.
I worked with him on a couple of meetings years ago.
Yeah, he's enjoying retirement. He's still teaching at the college, though, I'm pretty sure.
A little bit last.
Tell Jeff I said hi.
Roslyn, do you have any other school updates that might
We do not.
financially?
I have a quick question.
The last thing that we've talked about, we all talked about in here.
Okay.
Can I just interject of inquiring minds want to know? I just heard of a bus driver retiring and tomorrow is her last day. Is there a new bus driver lined up?
Actually, let's ask the principal because I do not know.
Should I bug him? He already got his jacket on.
I'm sure he could answer quickly.
Hello? Chris, we have one more quick question. I'm sorry. I was just heard about your wonderful bus driver that is retiring. Is there a lineup for replacing her, or what's?
I have, so Pat Dale for 40-some-odd years is retiring. She's one of the folks who started the company. And my understanding is, yes, they have some drivers in the pipeline, so we will not miss a driver.
Yay!
Still remain to be down, only one of us.
I'm very happy to hear of her enduring all those years. One
I
job
offered her
I
to
could
come in
not
and
do.
substitute, because we could use some more subs, but I'm not sure she's gonna jump at that anytime soon.
She's got the classroom management, bus management down to a
You could
science.
drive a bus, you could sub in the classroom.
Yep. Almost literally has eyes in the back of her head.
I gave her, I said, say her goodbye, and she's gonna stick around, do some work, at the base, and still be involved here and there a little bit, but she's happy, she's ready to go.
Good for her.
Oh, thank you, Preston. You guys have a great night.
Thank you so much,
Thank you very
Chris.
much.
And happy holiday.
You too.
Ben, you're up next. Yeah. Regarding the town budget.
Yeah.
Does the committee have any questions for Ben to take back to whoever is going to provide an answer for us? Regarding the budget that was emailed
2 weeks ago.
emailed to you with the agenda and also came in on the December 5th meeting while I was playing the
I
home
think the
game.
only thing Chris wanted to know is which departments we wanted to have come to the future meetings. Was the only open end from what the meeting you missed.
Okay,
Police.
Is that something you want? And if so, which departments?
traditionally, we've typically heard from the fire department, the police department, the road department, and the library, and,
Sometimes recreation.
Sometimes
rec if
recreation.
something's going on.
yeah.
There was very little
If-
change in the library budget, I don't know if we get to.
I think the other driver of this process is, are there department heads that wish to present their case to the budget committee?
I think that's more really what I would think we would need is if there's any department heads that need to kind of say, hey, this is what I presented, I need to, or I asked for this, I'd like more, or,
Sure.
I don't think we've met the public works director.
Oh,
as a
yes.
board. I would definitely want to, I haven't met him personally, so.
Yeah, because
Maybe
last
that.
year we didn't have the opportunity,
That's right.
so that would be.
I'd love to hear his vision for the future.
So depending
Definitely
on,
been an eye-opening experience for him for this season, that's for sure.
okay.
So,
So depending on availability of people, we've got two meetings scheduled for those. One being the January 9 meeting, and the other being the January 23rd meeting. So we can get some on one night and some on another night.
yep,
Okay.
that fourth on our meeting.
How about direct questions about the budget that was passed out on the 5th? I've got one. It was answered on the 5th while I was playing the home version. I was watching people from home.
Oh,
On
how did
December
we,
5th.
how did we
While I
look?
was making dinner. And a public thanks to John for covering for me. If we look down on the town clerk department, on the first page, there's a line, town clerk fees, that doesn't have any notes around it. If somebody could review for us what the town clerk fees are that we have to appropriate for. I mean, I know the town clerk collects fees, but here we're actually asking for an appropriation, and I don't understand that.
Okay. I don't have an answer for you, but I'll get
Quite
it
a
for you.
bit,
Does anybody have an answer for that?
big increase.
And why it goes up from one year to the next?
Well, and considering that I shouldn't be paying attention to.
Okay.
Because the town clerk is somewhat autonomous. I've never paid attention to that before. And Just saw that and said,
So the salaries for people that work in the town, they don't show increases in their actual line items for their salaries, but that merit pool is the increase for all the people, potentially?
That's the way you explained it to us.
Yep.
I was
So
just
they
trying
do
to,
it differently than.
yeah, I was gonna say, I was trying to explain, trying to understand it. So it is distributed based on a merit system? It's not just a cost of living increase, or is it a combination of both?
Trying to remember what we did for,
Performance-based versus?
well, the performance does play a role in it, particularly the police department, the highway department, and so on. I think, you know, but I can get a more definitive answer for you.
If I understand it correctly, the, like, cost of living part is in the regular budget, and then the merit part gets added at their review time.
Yes.
And then that kind of floats into the right account.
Oh, so they get cost of living plus merit?
Yeah, it's just separated out so that,
Actually, I take that back. I do see a budget change, like for the town administrator, the secretary, so that,
well, and some of that includes the merit from last year. So it's sort of.
It's a year behind.
It's paying.
oh, the merit's a year
catching up.
behind.
Right, right, so if their
That makes sense.
anniversary is June, right, they would get the cost of living increase, but then in June, they would get the merit increase.
My note was payroll increases when raises kick in upon the employee's anniversary date, but it is never spent in this line. So it's
Yeah, it
technically
gets pulled out.
yeah.
If you could maybe find out also, why would the merit pool increase by 19%?
Over the previous year?
Yeah,
So the way he explained the merit pool was a percentage of what the current salaries are. So if the salaries go up, the merit pool goes up, and then you added the public works.
I didn't know if it was
director.
more people too, you know?
Right, the public
Well,
works director is a
right.
new
We've-
full-time positions. and
Okay,
that added
okay.
to-
Yeah, I know we've added another full-timer with the police and
Okay.
another one for the highway department, which kind of cancels out, because we just had one leave. So,
But I think he said the pool is just like a 2 or 3% of whatever the
Yeah.
total.
Okay, that's fine. It just looks huge.
I didn't think there was any automatic cost of living increase built in, so maybe you
I
can
think
clarify
so,
that.
I'm pretty sure that, well, I could be wrong, but I thought that was part of it. But,
I'll get a definitive answer for you.
anything else for Ben? Questions on the town budget?
Is there a new furnace in here?
I think that's gonna be
At
on
least
some
a tank
sort
of
of
oil or
agenda
something.
soon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this thing's probably it's on its last legs. It's 1970-ish, so it's ready.
Probably part of the 73, I think.
Okay, Ben, is there anything else from the town that we need to know about?
Well, I just mentioned that you folks probably already seen the new truck that's come through as far as the highway department. It's been put to use, haven't had any issues with it, thank God. But there's been some maintenance issues, not maintenance issues, but some breakdowns with the highway department vehicles, the older ones. And a lot of that has to do with the, the road situation, it's rough plowing. So we do have a lot of breakdowns, to include the contractors as well. Police department got their new cruiser, it's been fitted, it's already put in service, looks great. The old cruiser has been repurposed for the highway department, for the admin, public works director. So we're not paying mileage out for his vehicle to use his vehicle, so. Other than that, I mean, you go through the budget, you can see this with some increases with healthcare and all that, but that's it, pretty straightforward.
Alrighty. Shall we go on to the minutes of December 5? Is there a motion to accept the minutes of December 5
I make that
as last
motion.
updated.
I move.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of December 5 as last updated?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Anything else?
I have a question. It says for January 2nd, school budget, final review with tax impact if wanted by budget committee.
That's an optional meeting. It was in the calendar.
So, yeah, so I just want to make sure, do we want it, do we not want it? Because I'd need to communicate with them now.
What date was that again? I'm sorry.
January 2nd.
Oh, okay.
So are you making additional changes between now and then, or do you guys not?
We are done. Sorry.
We are so done.
Did I say it like that? This is meeting number 4 for the
No
week.
filter.
We are done.
I mean, basically what we saw tonight is the school budget, right? So-
Well, because the week after we'll have the public hearing, so if there's not gonna be a different version.
That's correct.
Rosalind, would you like to propose a motion?
I will make a motion to cancel the January 2nd meeting.
I second.
I'll
On the
second
table?
that.
Further
Tom
discussion?
already did.
Oh, all right, well, I'll third it.
Hearing no objections, all those in favor?
School, yes.
Canceling the meeting of December,
January
January.
2nd.
I'm sorry, January 2nd.
This is the day after New Year's too, you know, so.
Kids go back to
Opposed?
school that days.
So, sorry, just to bolster the issue.
Yeah.
We don't have a meeting in between now and then, so there's no way for the budget to change. It would be a surprise to the school board members. if the budget changed.
Gotta watch those guys.
Yeah.
So that's the final budget.
That's it.
So that's what we did tonight, that's good.
Okay, so that means that we're not going to see anything further on the school budget until public hearing time.
That's the budget.
Well, the warrant article final.
So,
Right, but that'll be at the.
But yeah, oh yeah.
At the town hearing, public hearing. Okay, did you get the vote count on that, Lauren?
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any abstains?
You being the
Okay,
comedian
then.
now.
Okay, on to parting thoughts. Carol?
Nothing other than happy holidays.
Ditto, nothing here.
I'm good.
Happy holidays.
happy holidays.
From here as well. Ben?
Happy holidays.
Enjoy the holiday season.
Happy holidays and be safe.
See you all
Stay
next
warm.
year.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
I
second.
second.
All those in favor? Ay, ay, ay. Just, not bad.
Thank you.